Good morning, USA! From Malibu, California. I'm sitting here in my car looking at the Pacific Ocean at Sunset Beach, where surfers love to go. The waves come crashing on the rocks, but they're also really good. So here I sit looking at the rocks, and I wanted to make a couple observations before I start talking about latest events. I've observed with conservatives in the last 3 years for sure, and maybe even more, that they've actually become more understanding, more compassionate, whether it's that their children have become addicted to drugs, or people that they know became addicted to opioids, or things like that. But when we're talking about addiction, we're talking about the scourge of drugs on our nation, like the crack epidemic and opioids, I think that Republicans have finally started to realize that it's if not that it's a disease, that we can't solve it by shunning people. Tough love does work, but it's better to at least have an understanding of what people are going through. And I've seen that now with conservatives, which I did not see that in the 80s and the 90s. And while conservatives who seem, they're willing to have an open mind and to accept the First Step Act, which is giving clemency and releasing from prison people who have had absolutely ridiculous sentences, draconian sentences, the conservatives are really happy about it, but their liberal counterparts are not. Our liberal fellow Americans are not happy about it at all. Their amygdala is up. They have fight or flight instinct with Trump, and they just can't see how this would be something that Trump would have promoted and helped get passed, because Trump, they say, only does things for his own benefit. So it's a little bit of circular logic, but I just wanted to say I'm seeing a change among conservatives, and I like it. So obviously everybody watched the debate last night. I actually kind of already talked about how the Bloomberg-Bernie split is going to be a huge deal coming up. Bloomberg's probably going to continue to throw money at his campaign. I'm sure he's going to need to regroup after the beating he took. Elizabeth Warren, like I predicted, she's very good at yelling at men and showing them what's up and who's boss. And she's done it in committees for years. She wags her finger at the bankers. But I also have noticed one thing. Elizabeth Warren has been a professor. She was a lawyer and a professor her whole life. She's not a business owner. She doesn't understand businesses and community banks. If she did, she would probably have done something about all the community banks that have closed over the last 10, 15 years. But she doesn't seem to look out for small business, for Main Street. Bernie Sanders may talk about Main Street, but clearly doesn't know anything about Main Street. That's, can you imagine him as a business owner? Like all of these really hard-working business owners who are Republican, he doesn't even get it. And yet there is some intersection between Bernie supporters and Trump supporters. The intersection is the trade deals that were disastrous for our country. At least they acknowledge that, right? Bernie doesn't say, well, he may say the jobs aren't coming back, but he definitely knows what the problem was and why they went away. So that's about all I'll say about the debate. I heard it was highly entertaining. I was cooking and putting my son to bed. So next, I want to talk about Rod Blagojevich. And I can remember after Obama was elected, we were all so happy, and then it's like, what? This guy, the governor of Illinois? Oh, and he's pretty young, and he tried to sell Barack Obama's Senate seat? Oh my God. I've never heard of anything so horrible in all my life. And then or I think in the summer, he was impeached in 2009, and in the summer of 2010, he was his trial. He actually had a retrial in 2011. I guess he appealed it, but that failed too. And so I was reading up on it yesterday, and Blagojevich was caught on tape by the FBI. They wiretapped him, and I don't know if anyone actually ever heard the whole tape or if they just got parts of it, but I guess he was saying something about how he had found something that was golden, and the prosecution claimed that he was just trying to enrich himself, that he wanted like kickbacks for giving the Senate seat to longtime Barack Obama friend and aide Valerie Jarrett, who instead became a White House advisor. But apparently there was some talk of her wanting the seat initially, and even the president got involved, President Obama. And but the problem was the evidence at trial. A judge blocked Obama from testifying because Blagojevich's team had subpoenaed Obama and Valerie Jarrett and Rahm Emanuel, who then later in Obama's second term became mayor of Chicago. So I think we all kind of remember the history of the Chicago political machine. Sam Giancana, who was a mob boss in Chicago, basically delivered a bunch of votes to John F. Kennedy, thanks to his father, Joseph P. Kennedy, who was friends with the mob, and he won by a very narrow margin in Illinois, which handed him the presidency and made a difference anyway. Made a difference, and Nixon was robbed, I guess, and JFK became president. Well, it's funny because I always thought that JFK was kind of shady because of that, but in all of my research I realized this is the political machine. This is the way it worked. Ballot stuffing, dead people voting, absentee ballot altering, all that stuff. Voter fraud, all that stuff Republicans are always so concerned about. How stupid, right? And so it never really stopped. They say the Chicago political machine is legendary. Now, I don't know the details, so I don't claim to know the details. I was in college in Chicago when Mayor Daley, the younger Mayor Daley, was mayor. So we have this environment, this atmosphere. And Blagojevich, I did not know until 2 days ago, was very, very popular with the African American community in Chicago, the black community in Chicago. And I read a quote from one of the local politicians in a recent political article about it. They're very happy that he was pardoned, but they stopped short of thanking President Trump. A lot of them. I mean, some of them do. Anyway, they're very happy that he was pardoned, and one of them said that he was genuine. That the thing that made Blagojevich likable universally in the black community was that he was genuine. He wasn't pandering. How rare is that, really? It's extremely rare. He was comfortable with them, he said. The guy said. And so, what Blagojevich claimed before and during his trial was that he was trying to offer the Senate seat, which was vacated, as we know, by Obama's election, to the daughter of a longtime political, like a member of his state house. And so that, quote, the daughter would be in the Senate and would vote the party line, Democratic Party line, and that her dad would be more open to his agenda to help, help the cities, help the urban areas. And so that all never happened. It sounds like pretty much business as usual. I mean, remember when John McCain died, the governor of Arizona had to appoint someone to his seat, and I believe that Kyrsten Sinema got the seat, and then Martha McSally got John McCain's seat, and Kyrsten Sinema won by a very narrow margin after all the absentee ballots were counted. So it is up to the governor's discretion to offer the seat. What deals he's making, I I don't know enough about it to know whether this is common practice, what Blagojevich was doing, but Blagojevich was accused by the Justice Department and the Attorney General. The Attorney General, who was, I think it was Robert Mueller, or Robert Mueller was the head of the FBI, one of the two. And it was all the same team, James Comey, Robert Mueller, and then the Chicago U.S. Attorney. So he was accused of not doing a deal for the benefit of his agenda in the State House in Illinois, but he was cutting a deal to offer the seat to someone so that he could get actual money and maybe a political appointment by Obama. Apparently, he was talking about being an ambassador to India and all this stuff, but I am not exactly sure how that evidence came about. I know there was one witness who was particularly damning, who said, that thing about the daughter and the agenda and the political agenda was a ruse, to try, then, was a ruse to say, I might give it to this other lady, and then to offer it to Valerie Jarrett in exchange for a bribe. That was the whole thing. So it was federal government, Obama's people were involved. Greg Craig, the White House counsel, prepared a brief about it, which had a discrepancy from other documents, and then the conservative activist group Judicial Watch got involved and sued under a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, for more information. Oh, you know what they wanted? They wanted to hear Obama's interview with the FBI, and they wanted to get his 302. And to this day, the Justice Department has never released that information in spite of the Freedom of Information Act request. I wonder what national security and executive privilege was at stake then. I wonder. So, a very interesting case. The guy is, he speaks from the heart. He gave a pretty long press conference in front of his house yesterday morning. And he's surrounded by supporters, many African Americans, and it was almost like a prayer service, really. He's slick, for sure. But I have always wanted to look into the case because I just felt there was, if something was withheld, if evidence was withheld due to executive privilege, that, there's something shady about that. I don't even know who ended up getting the Senate seat. If anybody knows, put it in the comments. But that's the deal with Blagojevich. And then, lastly, I wrote an article last night about the 4 women of color who were either pardoned or granted clemency by President Trump on Tuesday. And that's because most of the media ignored them. And Chelsea Handler tweeted out, noticed all the crooks that Trump exonerated are of a certain color, but then Twitter just freaking buried her. Oops, I forgot to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. So Twitter buried her, and they're like, look at these 4 women of color, and then really the only coverage I saw of these women with Angela Stanton, who is on Real Housewives of Atlanta, but in 2007 she served time for a stolen car ring, and she's been really outspoken for harsh sentencing. And she was sponsored by Alveda King, as you know, who's Dr. Martin Luther King's niece and is a conservative activist. And then the other 3 women, one is Navajo, Crystal Munoz. The other is Hispanic. Her name is Judith Negron. And the other one is Tyneese Hall. Tyneese Hall was very young and allowed her boyfriend to use her apartment, I guess, to sell drugs. She said she turned a blind eye to it. She got like an 18-year sentence. She served 14 years of that. She said the sentencing protocol was acting like she had been the ringleader. I mean, all these sentences are amazing. Judith Negron, she was 30% part owner in a mental health facility that I guess they were attempting to defraud the federal government by falsifying like records or whatever. I guess maybe getting more than they deserved. And she got a 30-year sentence, and she served 8 years of those. Crystal Munoz, it was a similar thing. It was a marijuana operation or something, and she got like an 18-year sentence or something. So I love those women. Those 3 women were sponsored. They had petitions on change.org. They were working for their own release, which is what Alice Marie Johnson was doing too. They took control of their lives. They were model prisoners. They were volunteering. And they went and learned about how to go about petitioning for their own clemency for these harsh sentences. And so Alice Marie Johnson, who was pardoned by President Trump about a year ago or more, she sponsored these 3 women. And the story is amazing. And then another thing that was totally ignored by the press is that the First Step Act, which is now being implemented, has already released 3,100 prisoners due to excessively harsh sentences. And 1,691 prisoners have had their sentences reduced due to a change in the rule because there was a discrepancy between powder cocaine and crack cocaine between the sentencing for that. And so I don't know exactly the details of that, but because of, it's called a retroactive change in sentence, 1,600 people have a shorter sentence now, and most of them are people of color. Where is the media on this? Oh, they're too busy not being journalists. They're too busy being pundits, making fun of Trump, not getting it, not trying to understand when he's joking, not trying to understand his supporters, which is half the country or more now. And the disconnect is really getting kind of obvious, and it's annoying. So, okay, we've all done bad things, and Bloomberg has done shocking things, but Bloomberg, who is already a politician, should know better, and he has said more racist things than Donald Trump ever said. So, it's just, that's it. That's my talk for today. Please leave comments and leave a like and let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching Back to Facts.